Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining me. I was a developer like 20 years ago, and I wouldn't call myself a developer nowadays anymore, so I feel a little bit speaking to my past, people who were who are now as ambitious as I was at that time, and I really envy you because I know how much fun it was at that time to work on products and to develop from day to day. Nowadays I have more in contact with developers on a day-to-day basis. I still enjoy it. And I remember how much I liked to solve problems, try to strive for technical excellence. But I also remember what the problem was or how frustrating it was when we built something which was very good and it was technically perfect and we were really proud of doing that, but still it was not a success. And there seems to be a second ingredient besides having technical excellence that is needed in order to be successful. And my goal for the next 30 minutes is to give you some ideas from what I've learned, what might be the second ingredient on top of being technically excellent. And I will not tell you anything about technical excellence. I assume that you all are technical excellent. So if you have seen the program, you have seen also that there was a story mapping mentioned. Due to the 30 minutes, I will focus on impact mapping mainly for two reasons. First, I think it's the less known technique, and I think this is what is missing more than how to organize backlogs with story maps and drive product design with story maps. So you're going to hear more about impact mapping, and I will show you how story mapping ties into impact mapping. All right. I want to present the ideas in a way that you think of your current project, feature, or product that you're building and challenge what you're doing now against what I'm saying. So take a second, think about what you're currently building, visualize it in front of you, and think what would happen when you launch it and it was successful. Imagine you launched it, whether it's tomorrow because you launch every day, deploy features, new features every day, or it's in a year because you're working on a project that takes a year. Think about it was successful and you're celebrating. What made it successful? All right. Now we'll present a few reasons what could be answers to this. A few might have thought, well, we delivered in time and budget, and that's why we were successful. Anyone thought that? All right, you're brave, it's okay. I know, you know that's the wrong answer, but you show hands, that's great. Some of them might say, yeah, we have vision and goals. Who said we have a vision and goals? So few, okay. Some of them who have vision and goals might say, but how does it relate to what I'm doing? Nobody cares about them. Who said I have no clue what the guy is talking about? It's okay. So I'll try to lighten this up a little bit more. Some people say, I don't know why we're building this. I'm supposed to do it, but I don't know why. But somebody else might know. And some people just try to survive somehow and say, I don't care about this. I just try to get through my day with that. All of that are, as you might have guessed already, not recipes of the second secret ingredient that you need for success. And I want to present you some aspects that might contribute to your project success. So, some of you have said already there is a vision and a goal. Unfortunately, the goal, what you want to actually achieve, is often invisible. So you are headed somewhere, but you don't know where. You just get presented with some specified means how to get there, which is your specification, your backlog, the next story for the next sprint. I've seen so many agile teams working from sprint to sprint without knowing where they're headed to. And this is also frustrating for them because they have all the technical excellence to actually deliver weekly or bi-weekly or even daily, but they don't know where they're headed. So the question you want to ask is, what will happen? What is actually the actual goal where I want to head to? What will happen in the real world when our product is successful or the next feature is successful and right used? So it's not about what the hardware, the software is about, but the people where, what will happen in the world, what will change, what will people do differently? And a good idea for that, and this is usually that some people can do something more or less or more often, more accurately, more easy. Very rarely it's that they can do something entirely new, like flying to the moon, right? But usually what they're doing is existing already, will just change in the real world how it's happening. Another good indicator that you can ask yourself is that what we want to achieve? The answer to this question, what will change? Does it have potential to fail? Are we already sure that this will happen? Or do we first have to build something and see whether we actually get there? So that's another good indicator to find the real goal of a project, product, or feature that you're building. So that's the first step. How many of you can imagine that in their product, that they can ask that question and try to find that out? Only a few. Okay, I will try to convince you. Once you found that out, the next thing is you need to somehow quantify and measure where you actually want to go. And quantifying and measuring is even harder than finding out where you want to get, but it's necessary. And let's take some arbitrary goal, like we're building a case management system because we want to reduce the time for handling cases. That's a goal which is not quantified and not measurable. The first step is, how do you quantify that? Which means you define a scale. In this case, this would be like, well, it's for example, for cases, if I want to see that they got faster, I look at the number of days it takes in average to complete the case, to close the case, to settle it. The second thing you need is a meter that tells you how can I measure that this actually happens. This could be, for example, the database that tells you where the cases are with the open and close dates. So you have to find these kind of measuring points as well, because just being able to express what you want to achieve and being able to quantify how you achieve it is not enough. You need to also be able to measure it. And that's similar to when you have to write your tests before you build something. This is the business tests you have to build into your system before you actually start building something in order to reach the goal that everyone wants to reach. Now, having the scale and the meter is not enough. You actually also need to know where you are at the moment and where you are headed to. So where you are at the moment is usually some kind of benchmark, the current situation. Very rarely you don't know where you are at the moment. Sometimes you build something entirely new, there is no benchmark, but most of the cases you can somehow describe what's the current situation. The next thing is you need to find out where do I want to head to. And I advise defining this in some kind of landing zone. So not one precise value, because that would give the wrong sense of precision, but more like the direction and a landing zone that gives you the minimum you want to achieve and the maximum you hope to achieve, or that makes sense to achieve. These two boundaries, the minimum, the maximum, are also important for another thing that will help you later on steering your project, which are stop conditions. So the minimum is, if I don't reach the minimum, this was a failure. And in the next step, I will tell you how to get to this stop condition before the entire project is a failure, because that's the point. It doesn't help you if you find out after you have burned the whole budget that this was a failure. That's why a lot of projects that can only find this out after the project was delivered don't want to even know so explicitly that this was a failure. The other condition is even harder, because the other condition tells you when you can stop because you were already successful. Even less projects stop when they have reached already the goal and turn their attention to something else that's more important now. So that's why these two boundaries are also important. Not only because the precision would anyway not work to find one discrete value, but you want to use this stop condition to steer. And this brings me actually to the next point, how to use that for steering. Because what I told you so far, you could have known already. Every project wants to define their goal, at least by the book. So you could say, yeah, what new things is he telling now? But how do you use that you actually steer your project into that goal? And that's where it comes to agile teams. Because up to now, nobody was interested in that because it was a bet. Are we making it or not? And in the end, nobody wanted to know whether we made it or not, because often we failed on that. Now, how does the steering work? And for that, we have to tackle an important problem that I want to illustrate with South Park. Who has heard about the underpants gnomes already? Okay, so a few know the story already. It's a very good story told by Jeff Patton, which illustrates the next problem we have to tackle. How can we steer into our goal? So South Park, everyone knows, I guess. Yes? Let's see how many people don't want to show their hands at all. So who knows South Park? Yeah, great. Good. So in the Underpants Gnome episode of South Park, the Underpants Gnomes appear and they steal the underwear of the kids. And this causes a lot of commotion and a lot of excitement, and they decide to ambush them, and they follow them into their secret cauldron, into their secret cave, where they are finding them on a pile of underwear. And they ask him, oh, why are you stealing our underwear? And they say, yeah, you found us. We are really good in collecting underwear. Yeah, but why are you collecting this? Well, we don't know, but in the next room there is our business gnome, and the business gnome knows why. So they find the business gnome, and the business gnome says, oh, you have found us now. Yeah, but why are you collecting underpants? Yeah, we're very good in collecting underpants. Did you see how many we have already? Yes, but why? Well, I will tell you the secret business plan we have. It has 3 phases. Phase 1 is collecting underpants. Yeah, we have seen that. Then there is phase 2, and phase 3 is profit. I say, wait, phase 1, we understand, but yeah, phase 1, collecting underpants. Phase 2, and then there is phase 3, profit. And this is the problem we also have with just defining a single goal. So, or a single landing zone where we want to reach. There is something that has to happen in between in order to steer to that goal. And this is what I want to introduce you to with impact mapping, which is a very lightweight method which helps you to actually find out what the step 2 is. And an impact map is best done on stickies on a big wall with the stakeholders and with different people who have some ideas and hypotheses how this goal should be reached. And you're mapping basically these 3 phases. You have the underpants, the deliverables, the stories, the features that somebody wants, and you have profit, step 3. And you can probably describe it as quantifiable and measurable goals. However, you're also trying to find out with all your stakeholders what is step 2. And step 2 is usually changes in behavior, the thing that has to change in the world, where people have to do something differently so that that happens what we think is profit, what is step 3. And you are and you will be surprised if you talk with those people who made up that goals. Everyone has some ideas how this will happen. They just don't share this with others, and they don't align it with each other. And when you do this exercise with them, they will start to discuss. You will better understand what actually is supposed to happen, and they will probably even start to argue with each other what they think will come first or what will come not first, and what is more likely and what is less likely. And the second thing is, you also try to quantify and measure these behavior changes, as you do also with the goals. And what you do then is, you are trying to slice into smaller things, experiments that will tell you whether these behavior changes that you expect are actually happening or not. And this is the key to actually steer your project to where you want to end up with, and not to just see at the end whether step 3 has happened or not. And you can use these small steps not only to steer it into to the goal and reach it in any case, but you can also use these small steps in order to find out earlier when an idea will fail. So this failure condition can be also checked, and if you see like there is no way how we can get to this with this kind of idea, you will find out earlier about this. Now, how does this look a little bit in a more concrete structure? So let's come back to our case management system, and let's say, yes, we want to reduce the time for settling health insurance dispute cases. So disputes between patients, doctors, and the health insurance, where the health insurance says we don't want to pay it and so on. And we got presented with, and this was actually something we did, simplified, we need a case management system for that. because we want to reduce the time well, they didn't say that. We found out that they want to reduce the time because it took 3 years at that time to settle those cases. And what we did is we tried to reverse engineer the assumptions. Why do you think that when we built this, you will actually reduce this time? And they started to tell us, like, yes, there is this steering meeting. In the steering meetings, people will discuss the cases, and there is some functionality in this case management system that will help them in the meeting to better run this meeting, and we think this will make the meeting faster. And there was all kinds of assumptions. And of course, not only one assumption, but there were many assumptions. Another was, for example, yes, there are a few things that actually don't need to be discussed. It would be enough if the members of the steering committee would online check together, align, and sort out those cases up front that can be settled without discussion, so we would have less cases to actually discuss, and it would also reduce. There could be also other initiatives that affect what you are actually trying to achieve, like something that's not a software system that is built, but some other campaigns and things that are happening that will contribute to the same goal. So we got a quite good picture what actually will happen around and why certain features were done or imagined in this system. And basically, this is something you can do not only to find out what is planned, but also to come up with better ideas. Because probably understanding what are the assumptions, you can come up with better options how to solve that. The important thing to observe in these impact maps are the zone of control, the underpants, that you can decide to build or not, and the sphere of influence, which is step 2 and step 3, which you can only observe. So this is why we use agile methodologies, because that's a complex system which is only retrospectively coherent. So we only see in the back, we can explain why something happens, but we cannot predict it. And that's why we have this sphere of influence where we know we cannot decide it, but we can see whether if something we think should happen happens, that we can do more of it, or if it doesn't happen at all, that we can stop it. So basically that's the important 2 zones of the impact map that helps you to understand what you're actually building when you're talking with business. Now you will probably think, well, is this only for startups? Isn't he just telling what is there in Lean Startup? Yes, a lot of ideas are from there, and Eric Ries, when he wrote this book, was also not the first to invent this. So Goyko, a friend of mine, always quotes Palczynski, a Russian engineer 100 years ago, who already described ideas of Lean Startup, not for software, but for engineering projects. So yes, these are old ideas, and yes, they can be applied almost everywhere. We do a lot of government work, so work in governmental contracts and not startup work. And also there we have these assumptions, and we also find out what stakeholders actually expect from a project or from a product that is built, and we try to steer what they think they should do to what we should actually do with them. And sometimes we also realize something doesn't work out at all. Now, how can you apply this then in different domains or in different scenarios? And we see mainly 4 patterns how you could apply this. The first one is you can use it for alignment. So you can get the idea presented, the underpants, and you can try to find out what is actually going to be achieved, and you use it to align these different positions and try to find out what is really going to be built, and then build it, and then it either fails or works. This is good if you have not a lot of budget, and it doesn't matter so much if it fails. If you have more budget, and it doesn't matter so much, you can iterate even. So you deliver the first thing, it fails. You deliver another thing, it fails. You deliver a third thing, now it works. Sounds familiar, like a waterfall project where you do the first change request, the next change request, the next change request, and finally the project works. So that's also how you can use it. If it's more serious when you're wrong, then you would probably not just deliver and see how it fails, but then it's very important to do this small experiment. So this magnification glass here should symbolize you are first trying to carve out a safe-to-fail experiment that will validate your assumptions or falsify them before you actually build the real thing. And if you have more budget, then you can, of course, parallelize that and do more things in parallel on that. That's why I don't like the term Agile Requirements, because you don't know whether this is what is required until you have actually tested it in the real world. Still, if you look at what people consider as Agile Requirements, this is often called then a user story. You have to be aware that you're working on these different goal levels. So on the highest level, you deal with the why are you building something, where are we want to going, and on the lower level, you are dealing with the means, how are we going to get there. And impact mapping is actually a method that actually helps you to structure your backlog on this highest level. Story mapping comes just below that. This is when you have settled to a kind of deliverable that you want to build, and you are trying to now build the user experience for it, the design for it, visualize how this explodes into many sub-functions that you're going to iterate on and incrementally build in several sprints. This is where story mapping ties into impact mapping. Still, the whole story map has to be framed by the goal where you actually want to go, and has to be focused on certain deliverables, on either experiments or actual things that you want to deliver to reach your goal. And then there is other methods for specifications that I'm not going into right now. Again, the two spheres or the two sections, the lower part of the backlog, the more you get into the specification, the more you're dealing with the underpants, and you just can decide whether you build it or not. The more you're on the higher levels, the more you are dealing with assumptions that you have to validate. Okay, so that was the idea, presented some challenges when applying it. I often call it also excuses. The first excuse I often hear, it's already too late. We are building the system already, there's no time for this. So this is an exercise that takes, even for the largest projects, not more than a day, if you have the right people in the room, and you can get them sooner or later somehow. Because as soon as you have the wrong people in the room, you will realize that they cannot answer your questions and try to get the other ones. And you can reverse engineer quite quickly. And this visualization and alignment will be, this is my experience, immediately perceived as useful for the stakeholders you're working with. Because they sometimes say, now we understand why you're building this in that way. And also the team that builds it better understands suddenly why they're building certain things. So this is, I never go in and say, we do impact mapping, but I say I want to understand what you're trying to achieve. And this is basically the reverse engineering that always works, even at the end of the project. And then it should help you to better prioritize what you're building next, and not just blindly following in iterations a plan that was laid out weeks and months before, and you don't know why you do this in this order. The second excuse I often hear is we cannot measure this. And I agree that this is often more of a challenge, but it means often that you just have to also build features into your system that allow that measurability, and that's okay. That's what you also build tests for your system, so why don't you build business tests for your systems? You sometimes might find derived behavior, so you cannot measure something directly, so you have to find something else that you could measure that you think makes that. You have to automate it, visualize only what is relevant, remove what is not relevant anymore. And I recommend the book How to Measure Anything for everyone who tells you this is not measurable. It's like learning test-driven development for business people. Okay? And the third thing is not an excuse, but this is something which often happens if the first two excuses are overcome, which is that people forget to remember the stop conditions. Stop conditions in both cases, so make sure that you have it clearly defined, and make sure that you have safe to fail things for the failure stop condition, if this is real failure. It's not success if in the end you say, yeah, we failed, and we can tell you immediately, right? And try to have multiple options so that if something doesn't work out, something else could work, and use the goals only for steering the project, not for bonuses for people, because that will do a lot of damage. So the summary is, every endeavor, whatever you do, has success hypotheses, often hierarchical success hypotheses in the heads of the different project sponsors and people who have actually want that product. Try to visualize it try to quantify and measure them, and try to analyze the hierarchy between them. And the second thing is, once you have that, then this is where Agile teams can help you to actually steer to project success. Now, if you want to learn more about this, or if you're intrigued by that, there are 2 books that might be helpful. We also do training sometimes, and with Goiko, where you can actually practice it. If you want to experience, you can also join us if you want. We are still, we're always looking for jobs, for people. For jobs, yeah. And I want to give you a final thing to remember. Our job is not to collect underpants. Our job as developers is to change the world. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Christian Hassa.
Thank you.
From Tech Talk.